We are nearly 1 month away from the MLB trade deadline, and there is still a lot that David Stearns has to learn about his Mets team.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. It's the only podcast that covers the Mets 7 days a week throughout the regular season. If you want to find some of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Now, there are 26 games left until the trade deadline, which means the Mets are in this stretch run here where they have to figure out what exactly they have on their roster. I think a roster move the Mets made today is indicative of that. We'll talk about that in the next segment, which is Jared Young going down, Ronny Mauricio staying part of this team right now as the Mets try to figure out what infield mix will work for them this season. So that is a big talking point today. But another one, it's figuring out what the Mets have with their starting rotation. And all of a sudden, David Peterson is casting some questions. And it is crazy how quickly it can turn, because 2 starts ago, I was talking about David Peterson as a potential all-star, a guy that was pitching like an ace, coming off a shutout. Now, some struggles. Now, I don't think you're hitting the panic button yet, but if he goes out there for his next start and gives up 4 or 5, you're going to continue to raise your eyebrows and wonder, okay, what's going on with David Peterson? And today, if you look at this start, it's pretty clear what happened. He just completely lost command. That's the same thing we saw against the Phillies. All of a sudden, you see David Peterson can't get his fastball or a sinker in the zone, or when he does get the pitches in the zone, he does, get into a spot where he's forced to throw a strike. It's over the heart of the plate. And then he's missing his location a bunch. We saw in the second inning, after a pretty clean first, 1, 2, 3 inning, 9 pitches, looked like, oh, there's David Peterson again. And I'm already starting to envision in my head 7 or 8 innings out of Peterson shutting down this bad Pirates lineup. All of a sudden, the Pirates didn't look so bad offensively. Second inning, he walks Joey Bart, just missed a bunch of times arm side, and gets himself in a bad spot. So there's 1 runner on, gives up 2 base hits. Then a double by Alex Canario brings in a couple of runs and keeps 2 runners in scoring position, which both came in that inning. Another base hit, scores 1, a ground out, scored a 4th run. Every single hit, if you go back and watch the highlights, if Hayden Sanger was set up outside, the pitch came inside. If he set up inside, it's going outside. He just was all over the place with his command. And that's pretty much all you need to know about what happened in this start for David Peterson. Could just be a blip on the radar. Next time out, he might be great, but it's 2 bad starts in a row that definitely make you wonder, okay, is this a guy that you're absolutely penciling into a playoff rotation if you're fortunate enough to get there? I don't know. And suddenly the starting pitching continues to be an issue where it's putting your bullpen in compromising positions. It's putting your lineup in a spot where they're always playing from behind, which is never a great way to get offense. So this is something that needs to be figured out. And right now the Mets are in this point where they're kind of just rolling with what they got, and they are not taking the initiative or the opportunity to see what they have with a guy like Nolan McNeil, their top pitching prospect that I talked about on yesterday's show, because it makes the 40-man roster a little bit complicated. And they have Sean Manaea due to return soon, so they're only viewing it as 1 spot start, not a potential for Nolan McNeil to be in this rotation all the way up until the trade deadline to see, wait a minute, can this kid actually be part of the solution if there is a rotation problem? Instead, the Mets have decided that it's going to be Blade Tidwell. And Blade Tidwell is also a top prospect in this system, but he is pretty comfortably their 4th best pitching prospect right now, I would say. And you could start to make arguments with some of the arms lower in the system that are making an impression that he might not even be ranked that high, depending on what scout you talk to. It's pretty clear the 2 top pitching prospects right now, Nolan McNeil and Jonah Tong. Then you have Brandon Sproat, who's been up and down this year, and then you probably get to Tidwell. Well, tonight you had 3 guys pitching at the same time, basically. All prospects. You had Tidwell, who was coming out of the bullpen for the Mets. You had Jonah Tong, who once again had a dominant start in Double-A. He went 6 innings, allowed 3 hits, 1 run, 3 walks, 8 strikeouts. So a good game for him. McNeil in Syracuse, or I guess in Rochester, wherever they are this week, 6 innings pitched, 4 hits, 2 earned runs, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts on 85 pitches. This is so far 9 starts in AAA. In 8 of those 9 starts, McNeil has not allowed more than 2 runs. So he's the guy that I think is most rotation ready. But because of the roster and everything we talked about in yesterday's show, it was Tidwell. And I will give Blade Tidwell credit. While ultimately he let this game really slip away from the Mets, he came into a situation where David Peterson had already done most of that damage. Tidwell gets the final out of the 5th inning. Then he goes out there in the 6th inning, gives up a 3-run homer to Brian Reynolds that all but put that game out of reach. Gave up another run in the 7th inning. But I will give him credit. He got through the end of the game. And that was big for the Mets because it gave all the arms in the bullpen a day to rest and reset. So hopefully the Mets can attack the rest of this series and win the next 2 games. We'll be talking about that in the final segment. But all told, you look at the lines for both of the Mets pitchers tonight. David Peterson, 4 2/3, allowed 7 hits, 5 runs, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts. Tidwell, 3 1/3, 4 runs on 5 hits, 2 walks. Not a great day for either pitcher, but at least, again, it saved the bullpen. When it comes to where the Mets are at right now at their rotation, there's so many question marks, though, because we finally got the official word. Griffin Canning, for those of you who might have missed it, he is out for the year with a ruptured Achilles. So you can just scratch Canning off the list this season. You're not going to see him again, unfortunately, which we've talked about, all day on the 2 shows I did between the live stream after the game on Thursday and then the show for Friday morning. Just a devastating loss for him. He was just in such a good rhythm this season overall, and he was heading towards a pretty nice payday and a contract here. 29 years old. You really felt like he was just a guy that was going to stabilize the back end of the Mets rotation all season. And now you lose that. So this gets back into sort of information gathering mode. The reason why Noel McNeil is not being inserted into this rotation is because the Mets, I think, without Kodai Senga, believe that their strength is going to be to stay with the 5-man rotation, not a 6-man rotation, keep an extra arm in the bullpen. So that's one component. If you bring McNeil up, you likely have to go to a 6-man rotation. The other side of it, you want to see what you have with Paul Blackburn. And I know that a lot of fans are probably thinking, well, who cares? Paul Blackburn hasn't looked great. But he's only made 3 starts, and they haven't even been consecutively. He made his first start against the Dodgers, looked great, kind of struggled in the bullpen for a week and, I don't know, maybe it was 10 days, whatever it was. Made a couple appearances out of the pen. Then back into the rotation, has made 2 starts. They haven't been great. They haven't been terrible either. He's got to step up now and show that he can be that 5th starter potentially. So the Mets don't have to acquire a depth arm when they get to the deadline. I think the gauge on if they'll need a frontline starter, that is still, a big thing they're trying to figure out. And it's going to depend on the health of Kodai Senga, how Frankie Montas looks over the next month, what Clay Holmes looks like once you get to the deadline. Can he actually hold up for the full season? And then, of course, what's Peterson been looking like, and what is the timetable on a Kodai Senga return? But right now, in the information gathering period, this is a time where David Stearns is committed to seeing what the veterans in place can do. And I think the time to potentially see a McNeil would be either in the bullpen later this season or in August or September. If he continues to pitch really well and the Mets are just still looking for answers, maybe that's where they'll try to find them. But I think what we're seeing right now with how the Mets have made their decisions for this stretch ahead until we get to the All-Star break is this is a time where they're trying to figure out what they have. And that does not mean sticking Paul Blackburn in the bullpen so that a top prospect can make some starts. Instead, it is trusting the 5 veterans that you believe will be healthy for the month of July, which is Peterson, Holmes, Montas, Manaea, Blackburn, and getting as much information as you can on those starters so you know exactly what you might need at the trade deadline. The same thing goes for their starting lineup. The Mets did not have a great offensive game today. Juan Soto's home run is pretty much all they put up, or it is all they put up offensively, but I still liked the way that Carlos Mendoza set up his lineup today, and I think we're going to see a lot of this lineup moving forward, so I want to talk about it more here in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. If you're looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious, Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you feel fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety of Wonderful Pistachios. It is the perfect grab and go snack, and this is my favorite flavor. I love the smoky barbecue. I also enjoy the honey roasted, the sea salt and pepper. There's so many different flavors that I really do enjoy, and I am a big proponent of the no shell variety. But if you are into cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite as well. Get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 14,000 subscribers. Now, the Mets made their roster move today to activate Mark Vientos, and it was not Ronny Mauricio that got sent down. Instead, the Mets optioned Jared Young. Now, for those of you who listened to the show yesterday, my gut was telling me that Ronny Mauricio was going to go down, but I wanted Mauricio to stay because he's been swinging the bat very well from the left side. And my hope was the Mets would keep him on the roster and they would lean into playing Jeff McNeil in center field. Because if you play McNeil in center field and you essentially bench Tyrone Taylor, make him a fourth outfielder, which is really the role he is meant to be playing on this team, then all of a sudden that opens up a lot of playing time at second base. And that playing time for right now can go to Ronny Mauricio, and that is what we saw in this game. The Mets lineup tonight was Francisco Lindor, Brandon Nimmo, Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil playing center field, Mark Vientos at DH, Brett Baty at third base, Ronny Mauricio at second, and they had Hayden Senger behind the dish. When you look at that lineup, your 1 for 5 are the veteran players that are leading you this year. And I think Jeff McNeil, while he is not necessarily the power threat that Brandon Nimmo is, or the, the leader necessarily, or the, guy on the big contract, he in stature probably falls a little bit behind your kind of core four at the top of Lindor, Nimmo, Soto, and Alonso. But in function this year, what he has meant to this team, he is every bit the everyday player that those other 4 guys are. So to me, those are the 5 guys that should be in a lineup every single day. And if you're wondering, okay, playing McNeil as an everyday center fielder, is that too much? I think you're going to be able to get him enough time off his feet where it's fine, because he's not going to play very many full games in center field. He'll either come in to play second base at the end of the game, like we saw tonight when Carlos Mendoza basically punted, put in Tyrone Taylor, put in Travis Jankowski, pulled Juan Soto, pulled Francisco Lindor, slid Mauricio over to shortstop, and had McNeil finish off the game at second base. You might see that where he comes into the dirt for the final 3 innings. But you're also going to see him out of the game through 6 a lot of times. So it to me makes a lot of sense to just see what it looks like for a while, because there's every chance when it comes to figuring out what you're going to need at the deadline that the center field options are not going to be great. And Jeff McNeil might legitimately be the Mets' best option to start in center field this season. And I think what the Mets would then be trying to figure out is, okay, between Mauricio, Baty, Jet Williams, who might end up in AAA by the time we get to the trade deadline, Luisangel Acuna, who is in AAA right now. Between all of these guys, can they find at least one of them that can stick and hold down second base? And if they can, and if Mark Vientos gets back to being Mark Vientos, or if Brett Baty continues to hit, swinging of the bat pretty well right now, had a couple doubles in this game, although one of them should have been a fly out. It was just an error, but no one touched the ball, so it ends up being a double for Baty. But you need to figure out if Baty and or Vientos can hold down third base. So that's what this month is about. It's about seeing what you have with Baty, Vientos, and Mauricio. And if there is some growing pains, you got to fight your way through it, because you want to know for sure, okay, does this team need to add a second baseman? Does it need to have a third baseman? Is it just a DH away? Like, you have to learn all you can about this roster so you can make educated decisions at the deadline. I think that's what this is all about, optioning Jared Young. It's because the Mets are looking at Ronny Mauricio, and I think they can envision him actually being the starting second baseman with Jeff McNeil, the starting center fielder. Baty and Vientos holding down third base, and Jesse Winker being the bat at the deadline again, so to speak, but this time coming off the injured list, helping you as your DH platooning with Marte, and then you'd have a rotation of different guys. But I think if your top five is Lindor, Nimmo, Soto, Alonso, McNeil, and your bottom four ends up being Vientos, Baty, Mauricio, Alvarez, that's a very interesting combination of veterans and the baby Mets that could actually be a very good lineup this season. But you're going to need to see some strides from Mauricio and Baty in particular over the next month. And you need to see Mark Vientos get back to being himself. He had a brutal game, 0 for 4 with a couple of strikeouts. The one, though, that jumped out to me, I don't really want to dive into everything from this game. I mean, to give you the lowdown, if you missed it, Mitch Keller pitched a pretty good game. Juan Soto homered in the fourth inning, his 11th in the month of June, 20th on the season, so more than doubled his home run total this month. So that was good to see. The Mets had a few chances. Nimmo in the first inning got a base hit, stole second base, was stranded by Soto and Alonso. Brett Baty had a 2-out double in the second. Ronny Mauricio popped out, so Baty was stranded. Fifth inning, Mauricio got a 1-out single, never got past first base. In the sixth inning, though, here's the at-bat that I really wanted to focus on. You had, after Nimmo flew out, 100 miles per hour off the bat, just hit right at Tommy Pham. Juan Soto walked. Pete Alonso got a base hit. Jeff McNeil flew out. So 2 outs. Mark Vientos is up. He strikes out on a fastball that, I kid you not, was right down the middle at 95 miles per hour. Right down the pipe. And just swung right through it. Last year, that fastball down the middle is a 3-run homer. And a 5-1 game becomes a 5-4 game, and it's a huge inning, and all of a sudden, the Mets have life. Instead, Vientos struck out, and the inning was over. That's one of the things that has to change. And it's up to Swaggy V to step up and be the guy that we saw last year. And he's got 26 games to prove it. Otherwise, I really don't know how the Mets approach this deadline other than the fact that they're going to have to grab a bat. And if you go into a deadline, you need to grab bullpen help, at least one starting pitcher, and a bat. You might not have that great of a team. So you need to see this team step up over the next 26 games. And it starts with finding a way to beat the Pirates in this series. That's where we're going to close the show. I want to preview the final couple games. So we now have some pitchers officially announced from the Pirates. So I'm going to talk about that, what the Mets have to do to get back into this series. We'll go through it all in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and it makes every regular season game feel like a must-watch event. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet right into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets. Your first $5 bet wins. Open the FanDuel app or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. If you're an everydayer that's always tuning into the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. Start texting service where you get updates from me. Anytime news breaks in the Mets, you can ask me questions anytime. Take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways. You get the line graphic sent to your phone each day so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. All right, so let's talk about the rest of this series here. Late afternoon, 4 o'clock game. You got Bailey Falter for the Pirates going against Paul Blackburn. Now, Falter, left-handed pitcher. We saw him earlier this season against the Mets. He did not give up a run, but he walked 5, gave up 3 hits, and was pulled in the 4th inning. The Mets were then largely shut out by the Pirates bullpen, and they lost that game. That was the getaway day at home after they'd already taken the first 2 games of that series against Pittsburgh. Now, they're going to try to do the inverse. They've lost the first game. Now they're going to try to win out the next 2 and earn a series victory. You look at Falter, and he's not the type of guy that's going to strike out the world. He is a pitch to contact, try to pitch to soft contact left-handed pitcher that, typically is going to be very hit or miss. It's either going to be, he's locked in and he might be able to get you through 7, or you might be able to get him out of the game in the 4th inning. So the Mets have to grind out at bats, make it tough on him, and try to get into that Pirates bullpen. I'm sure we will see a right-handed lineup that will include Mark Vientos starting at third base, I would imagine, with Starling Marte at DH. The only other option is Vientos at DH, Marte in left field, with Brandon Nimmo getting a day, or Jeff McNeil maybe getting a day. If it's McNeil getting a day, obviously that would mean that you would have Marte DHing with Nimmo at left and Vientos at third. Second base, either be Jeff McNeil or Ronny Mauricio. I would continue to play McNeil, but he is 1 for 8 against Falter. Not really a large enough sample size that I would take any conclusions from it. Only has 1 strikeout, I believe, or 2 strikeouts in those 8 at-bats. So we'll see. We'll see what the Mets decide to do. Ryan Mauricio has not swung it well from the right side, but they also might want to still give him that exposure as a switch hitter to see what they have. So I'll be very curious to see what the right-handed lineup looks like against lefties on this day on Saturday, to see what Carlos Mendoza puts out there. Is it Mauricio at second with Tyrone Taylor in center field and McNeil on the bench? Is it McNeil still in center field with Tyrone Taylor on the bench? I'd imagine Taylor gets in there. My guess on the lineup would be Lindor, Marte as the DH, Soto, Alonso, Nimmo, Vientos at third base, McNeil at second, Terens, and then Tyrone Taylor in center field. That's what I would think the Mets are going to do, but we will see. Not a lot of sample sizes to really draw from when it comes to Falter's career head-to-head against the Mets. Brandon Nimmo has hit him very well, 6 for 14 with a home run. Lindor is 3 for 10 with 5 walks. Pete Alonso only 1 for 10, but that one was a homer. And on the season, Falter has a 3.59 ERA. Now, Paul Blackburn is looking to turn things around with a good start. Now, he's certainly struggled since going back into the rotation, but I feel like you have to give him at least a little bit of time to see him get fully acclimated to being back on a starting pitcher's routine. So for now, let's see what he has. I know the Pirates had a great offensive game against David Peterson. That does not make them a good offensive team. If Blackburn's on and he's locating his pitches, he can get this team out. And the Mets, I wouldn't say have a pitching edge, but they have such a big advantage, or they should have such a big advantage on just how much more talent they have than the Pirates, that you can't look at either of these games and say the Mets shouldn't win it. They should win this series. They should find a way. It was just a very rough beginning that makes you wonder if some of the stains of those 2 weeks of losing are still on this team and they're not quite past it, even though it felt like they were after winning those 2 games against the Braves. Now, when it comes to the state of the bullpen for this game, there is a new reliever in the mix, Colin Poche, who was added to the fold on Friday. Poche has a 3.94 career ERA. Last year was a 3.86 ERA in 43 appearances. In 2023, he had his best ever season with the Rays, a 2.23 ERA in 60 and 2/3 innings pitched. This year, though, not a good season. He's given up 11 earned runs and 8 and 2/3 innings pitched with the Nationals to start the year. That's how he got cut and ended up in the Mets bullpen in Syracuse. He was really just the freshest arm, though. He had not been pitching particularly well, a 4.26 ERA in 12 games. Hadn't pitched since the 20th, so I think this is just a matter of getting a fresh arm up. I imagine Poche would be on for any mop-up duty the Mets might have over the next few days. Everybody got rest on Friday, so Jose Budo, Huascar Brazaban, those guys should be ready to give you multiple innings potentially after Blackburn. Brendan Waddell should be available for any left-on-left matchups. You got Stanek, Garrett, and Diaz for leverage. This bullpen should be pretty stocked and loaded. I think the one guy that might not pitch on Saturday is Daniel Nunez, just because he threw a lot of pitches the other night. Maybe want to give him 2 days off, and hopefully you can get back to that incredible, 2-inning dominant force that you can throw into your game with the lead, in the 6th inning, and he could bridge the gap to the late innings. That would be a really big thing for this bullpen, and Nunez certainly looked the part his last time out. So I think this bullpen is in a pretty good spot for this series now. They've gotten the rest that they needed. Hopefully they can now win these next 2 games. On Sunday, it'll be Frankie Montas versus Mike Burrows. Burrows is a rookie who's got a 4.45 ERA, but that is largely due to his first 2 starts this season, where he gave up a bunch of runs. He gave up 4 runs in each start. Then he went back to AAA. And he pitched pretty well in AAA this year overall. 2.51 ERA. Comes back up in June. He's got a 2.86 ERA this month. His last appearance did come out of the bullpen, but he has made starts. He is a fully stretched out starting pitcher. So that is who the Mets will see on Sunday. They fared pretty well against rookie starters lately. So if they get that to a rubber match, the way Montas pitched last time out, with the Mets' ability to maybe hit an inexperienced arm, you feel pretty good about their chances to win the day game on Sunday, but they got to win on Saturday first. And right now, this is a spot in the season where the division very well could just keep flipping hands a bunch because the Phillies destroy the Braves after not scoring all week against the Astros. They piled on 13 runs in a shutout of the Braves, and they once again grabbed first place in the National League East. So these two teams, again, could be flip-flopping all month, but for now, Phillies are in first place, Mets trailing just behind by half a game. We'll see what they can do to finish off this series against the Pirates. This is a big one because next week should not be as easy. You're going to have the Brewers who have been playing some good baseball and the Yankees in town at Citi Field. So those are two teams that can be very tough on you. You will have a little bit of an easier stretch on the road to close out the first half with the Orioles and the Royals coming up beyond that. But the Mets have to take advantage of playing what is right now, based on the record, the third worst team in baseball. You cannot lose a series to the Pirates. So we'll see if the Mets can get back on track on Saturday behind Paul Blackburn. I'll be back for a show for you tomorrow morning, but it's going to be audio only because I am going to be away from the house. So you will have that waiting for you in your podcast feed. No live stream after the game. And apologies to anyone who was waiting for it after the game on Friday night, but it was such a bad blowout that I wanted to take time and really think about what I wanted to talk about for a full show rather than just recapping a game that I think we all would probably prefer to forget. But I'll be back with more of the live streams after the game starting on Sunday, likely, if not Monday, or excuse me, they're off on Monday. So Tuesday, and you'll have your typical flow of Locked On Mets content between my show every morning and then our postcast with me filling in for Chris over these next couple of weeks. Anyway, that's going to be all for this edition of Locked On Mets. I appreciate all of you for tuning in. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, check out Locked On MLB Game Night, the show that'll take you around all the action in Major League Baseball with insight from some of our local experts. You find Locked On MLB Game Night on the Locked On MLB YouTube channel, as well as the Locked On MLB podcast feed.